guys remember Sonic 3D Blast? I do. Talked about it for a bit years ago, and I didn't really like it. The isometric view combined with how loose Sonic controlled led to a game that wasn't very fun to play for me, and the emphasis on exploration for little birdies only helped highlight how awkward platforming, attacking, and traveling in the game was. Now the pre-rendered graphics, well, that was a sign of the times. Nintendo was doing it in the mid-90s with Donkey Kong Country. Those games were great. I won't knock 3D Blast for the attempt. It doesn't look horrible except for the flat checkerboard patterns, and if I could take anything from it, especially the Genesis version, it's got a great fucking soundtrack. I could listen to it wherever and whenever. And yeah, I didn't bother recording past Rusty Ruins for this look back. I don't really like the game, so I didn't play much of it. But to my point, what are some of the first things you think about when Sonic 3D Blast is brought up? For whatever reason, odds are it's the isometric view and the pre-rendered graphics. For some reason, Sega took those two aspects and made a game for each of them. One for the isometric view and one for the pre-rendered graphics. Sonic Labyrinth and Sonic Blast. And we're starting with Labyrinth first because holy shit. This is the one I categorized for the longest time as one of the worst Sonic games I've ever played. Like period. 2D or 3D, it didn't fucking matter. Baffling, and didn't even begin to describe what I thought of the setup. Fed up with his latest defeat by the hands of Sonic, Dr. Robotnik has finally had enough. He's just now having enough. One night, he manages to sneak in Sonic's house and replace his famous running shoes with a specially designed pair of Robotnik sneakers that hinder Sonic's movement and jumping ability. First off, Sonic has a house. Sonic and the Secret Rings is thereby a sequel to Sonic Labyrinth. I'll have that official South Island Historia ready by the 30th anniversary. And secondly, Dr. Robotnik manages to sneak into Sonic's house while he's snoozing, and his only action is to swap his shoes? Motherfucker, that's your arch nemesis! I'm not one to condone murder in a series primarily meant for kids, but come on, burn the house down, bust his kneecap, shit in his toilet and don't flush. You just swap his shoes? That does it. I ain't ever taking your ass seriously again, you round fuck. Sonic is then taken into Robotnik's massive labyrinth where the Hedgehog is challenged to escape before Robotnik uses the Chaos Emerald to take over the world. But because of Sonic's new footwear, speed is non-existent, and he can't jump, effectively turning him into Mr. Big. Sorry, that might have been too obscure a reference. Luckily for Sonic, he can still spin dash, and for all intents and purposes, that's Sonic's main mode of transportation in Sonic Labyrinth. Zipping and zooming in a straight line, hoping the guy doesn't get skewered by whatever's ahead of him, and bouncing off walls like a hyperactive child. It's like a perpetual game of miniature golf. It was the idea of controlling a Sonic that couldn't run fast or jump that raised the red flag. I get that it's a spin-off, not tied to the traditional rules of the main series, but what is it that sets Sonic apart from the rest? That's right, his speed. It's the same issue I had with Rise of Lyric. Without that, what's the point? In all fairness, that philosophy of mine only applies to a Sonic platformer. Sonic Labyrinth isn't a platformer. It's a game where you guide Sonic through incredibly short mazes and find 3 keys scattered in each level. Once you do, you find the exit and you're off to the next stage. It's a puzzle game in some fashion. I say some fashion because it's really only brain taxing when going for the perfect ending. Should I say brain taxing? I meant brain scratching. You collect Chaos Emeralds as you defeat the bosses, but to get the hidden one, that requires getting to this bonus stage. The act of entering the stage is what gives you the emerald, but there's like no indication for that. You just have the emerald now. What, did he just suddenly remember that it was in his back pocket? The rest of the game boils down to collecting keys, which just requires basic exploration. Remember where you've been, where you haven't been, and you'll get by. As much as I don't like the game, it's easy to understand. It also helps that the game is super fucking short, beatable in under half an hour. But short game or not, it's still awkward to play, and the sole culprit is Sonic Spin Dash. You can play without it, but that makes the game longer than the 10 Commandments, and best of luck trying to kill enemies with keys in them. Without Spin Dashing, you can only rely on the sporadic power-up. If it didn't already give you a fucking seizure, Jesus Christ! This was toned down tremendously in later releases. They probably didn't think it was a big deal at the time on a small Game Gear screen, but on a computer monitor or TV? Spin dashing makes you fast, but it also makes you hard to control, and since you're doing this for most of the game, Sonic is hard to control, and that's my biggest gripe with Sonic Labyrinth. You know, when I was younger, I was like, rah, Sonic's supposed to go fast, what is this piece of shit? Years went, I got older, I mellowed out. The coffee helped with that bit. I can look past the concept, but when it comes down to control being weird, that's the hardest pill for me to swallow as someone who likes to be 100% in charge of where he goes and ends up. In Sonic Labyrinth, you can only hope amongst all the bouncing, ricocheting, and bumps that Sonic will be in a safe locale once you get him to stop, but it's only a moment's respite because the spin dashing won't stop until you reach that goal. The longer you hold the button down, the stronger the spin dash will be, and unless you're speedrunning the game, don't do that because it's a crapshoot. There's not much that can harm Sonic, to be fair, and the only thing you lose when damaged is time off of your limit, which you have plenty of, but exercising precision with Sonic here is ultimately the most frustrating thing about this game, and at the end of the day, that's why I can't recommend it. If I could recommend something, anything from this, it's the soundtrack, which yeah, I know, second isometric Sonic game, and the best thing about it to me is the music. There's only a few tracks, but it's all great shit. Dare I say, the best soundtrack of Sonic's Game Gear lineup so far, which is saying a lot for me. I don't remember a lot of Game Gear Sonic tunes unless it's Bridge Zone. Certainly miles better than the next game. Let's look at Sonic Blast next, and dear God, look at Sonic Blast. But first, the formalities. Robotnik is back to cause some shit, so Sonic and Knuckles this time team up to stop him. Sonic has a double jump in this game for whatever reason, but it does its job and makes exploring a little more fun, in massive quotes there. Knuckles can glide through the air and climb walls as you expect him to. There's rings to collect, enemies to destroy, and Chaos Emeralds to secure, and this game goes the Sonic 3 route, where the special stage is accessed by finding the giant ring in secret locations. I'm down with that. It's just too bad I'm not down with everything else. As the box art probably told you before you even put the game in, this was Sega's attempt at making an 8-bit handheld Sonic game with the same pre-rendered graphics as Sonic 3D Blast. It wasn't too far-fetched an idea. I once again go back to Donkey Kong Country. They tried the same thing with the Donkey Kong Land series for the Game Boy, and I recall people liking those games. At least I knew more people that played those than this. I haven't played them for myself, so I have no personal thoughts on that. At least not yet. There's a difference here though. You see, unlike Donkey Kong Country, Sonic already had an established foundation on a handheld. Sonic Blast was a 1996 Game Gear title. It had a short-lived Master System version in Brazil. That's a thing. And as I've showed you, Sonic has had plenty of other games for the Game Gear, and jumping from something like Triple Trouble to Sonic Blast was, ooh, it wasn't a pretty jump. I'm sorry, these sprites just don't cut it. It's like someone took a Sonic toy from a Happy Meal and placed it in a microwave. The models from the Pakistan Sonic Heroes commercial look better than this shit. The animations are stilted, the sheer size of the characters make the screen feel tiny on an already tiny screen, and the whole game just looks washed out. Compared to the other games, collision detection also seemed to be worse. Counted several times where I got stuck on a loop or when things felt unresponsive. The graphics were likely the biggest focus here because everything else feels lesser. The zones are nothing remarkable, if not unpleasing to venture through. I've played better green hills than these. The only thing triangular about this pyramid are the abundance of spikes all over the goddamn place. This volcano is no lava reef, and Blue Marine, fuck you. We're talking Sonic Genesis levels of lag and slowdown, even for an underwater stage, and ugh, such a lust for laziness. Tubes! Yeah, this wasn't a fun time for me. Where are the power-ups from Chaos or Triple Trouble? Why are the boss battles so pathetic? Why does it feel like I'm traveling through the same stage with a different coat of paint each time? I'll tell you why. It's a 1996 Game Gear title. This was possibly made for a quick buck because the jump to 3D was an ambitious time for everyone. Sega wanted to capitalize on that most likely despite having a perfectly functional Sega Saturn, and the Dreamcast wasn't too far off, so there was that as well. Sonic Blast feels like a rush job with nothing to set it apart from the rest. For me, the worst of the Game Gear platformers, no doubt. Sonic 2 is bullshit hard, but it felt like there was effort placed in its design and gimmicks, and Sonic Chaos is too fucking easy, but it had something in the special stages. This is not interesting at all, no matter if you're Sonic or Knuckles. Best thing about Sonic Blast, the random as hell Journey to the West reference in this boss fight. I mean, what the fuck? Is it an homage to the original tale? Dragon Ball? God knows Super Sonic is already a ripoff of the Super Saiyan. Dare I say, is it a reference to Alex Kidd? Now, there's still a couple of Sonic-centric Game Gear games left to look at, but for the next video, I wanted to shift gears a bit to a certain two-tailed fox. Yes, Sonic's #1 pal had a couple of Game Gear games dedicated to him, and that's going to be our focus for the next video. One was originally a Japanese exclusive for so long, and the other was not your typical Sonic game. Well, both weren't, but we'll find out more with Tails Sky Patrol and Tails Adventure for the Game Gear. But before I end this video, I just want to take a minute to talk about Loot Gaming. Figured it was the best idea to leave this at the end of the video to not get in the way. Loot Gaming is a subscription-based service that for $25 a month can deliver a box of gaming-related goodies straight to your door, from licensed figures, collectibles, clothing, apparel, and much more, usually ranging to $60 in retail value, so you're saving some money doing that, which is smart. A better deal than Sonic Labyrinth and Sonic Blast, that's for sure. If you visit lootcrate.com/Johnny and use the promo code corporate shill, I'm kidding, Johnny, you can save 10% on your purchase. So go do that if you want to. December's theme is space-related, involving merchandise from Mass Effect Andromeda, Destiny, Ratchet & Clank, and XCOM 2. Could make for a fun holiday gift for you or someone you know that loves video games. With all that said, thank you all for watching. Have yourselves a fantastic night, and take care. I'm not sponsored by Wawa, by the way. I didn't feel like putting this in a mug. It's a big cup.